So I think that is how we should push it. Save rihaakuru. That's right.
The first victim of this is going to be the coral reefs.
Ryan, we're doing something a little bit different today. We don't have a guest in person, but we are going to be talking to someone very cool over Zoom.
All right. Hello.
Hi, Noora. Welcome to Seriously. Seriously is a podcast in collaboration with UNICEF where we try to talk about climate change and especially how to get young people involved in climate action. Which is why where you work for, climate outreach, is perfect.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
So we've been having a lot of experts on our show in regard to climate change to see what we can do and how we can do it and what you've done so far. So let's dive right in.
Then after I moved to UK for uni, I remember one distinct time Malia goes snorkeling at the Varakal excite Velafa and a bathologo reefaka. And it was such a disappointment. Adirati could Mikolati couldn't go again. Fonikadam vegan divi Raja Vara Salivane, Vara Riti Reef, Varakula, Takanike, Vara Fonikandaf Midie. It felt like I went to a coral graveyard. And that memory though was very impactful in a way though. Got me thinking, and then 2004 tsunami was also a big moment where we had that reflection time. Okay, sea level rising is really happening. After studying and everything and working in the NGO sector for a while, and then I was like, okay, everybody agrees this is a thing that happens. Ambition level is high, and a intergovernmental cooperation become solve kora. Ekamekala me ambition set kuram varbada cooperative baswe ekam kankuramvi gota deterega policy changes or the pathway or the way to implement and achieve these objectives. Though it was kind of consensus and no, though if we know this is something real, why are we not doing anything? Though and then I came across climate outreach. What they do is they focuses on understanding the public perception around climate change, and research shows that British population, for example, varapodang understand where climate change is real kang, and varapoda care kore, concern level is high. A concern ekala action ang hadam vi goe a efficacy mihung atagano hundaniye. So climate outreach does work to create that efficacy in the society.
Koba efficacy ge mane ki mi ge tere.
Misalakang we know sea level is rising. What can I do as a person, as an individual? Though funding and apply kuram bito misalaka ituru veli hodan do. Nuni awareness programming hadam bito ginamihung ega participate kora. Nuni sarukara campaign kuram bito. Ginamina waguteki ekala amilamiha kuram bikang esualu ega jawabu hodan uduguwani.
Divese gotung or Maldives from a Maldivian perspective. Kiha varaka. I mean, how much does that impact your work in climate outreach?
Rajege climate story ki we've had 2004 tsunami though. Ekamo adi iratful kore via eha bodu ane environmental catastrophic one significant event where mass displacement happened with adi neddo. Which is we're very lucky and we're grateful though. And then when I think about it, the reason ki divehinge josh, divehinge ekalabunahin resilience and the will of adapting and surviving though varang inspiring iti. Then devana kamaki Rajage carbon emissions is negligible. Raja exemplary though a carbon emissions reduce kura. Ekamo mege bodu pollute mege bodu amount of me. And pollution ke gotung carbon emissions gotung the big polluters, the European nations, so any boda Western. Eve mekala Western countries ke carbon davejaya divehina varabodu vinnetto divirajato embe fragile. Divehi raje ke story diviraja kanino Pacific Islands ke vesekala resilient adaptation project. What do we do with our climate finance, for example? Though a story
When we get it.
When we get it, stories ekala to put it in front of the British public, not just British, European or pan-European work. Is the climate outreach ke why I work for climate outreach. Even though it has a Europe-centric, divihinna do ege emme bodu fada vani for my family and friends kawasto.
UK olong ero me emme fahung rajang aikong ero because what was the time gap between when you went and saw the beautiful corals and then how it had changed into a coral graveyard as you mentioned?
2004 ga rajang furi ane kiyavanda. So once a year at least daane ekamo ane mid 2000s ga ane muda neri dia gaganaka 5 වරකගේ.
UK ගෝලය රැවසරක මුද නේරන්ත නොවත.
UK muda ngereng ekamo vara fini snorkeling no kurave.
So
It's freezing.
he did mention Rajaminga Bilga Vakadu, so you have that bill, you know.
Noora, do you see a public perception masike kurad? Do you see a change in like how people are perceiving climate change and how like they believe their government should act in terms of ambition and implementation?
Vara boda fene miharo kop ginami hunna mihin TV fenne iruga boda, and even I used to think so though. Hamekani ekala minister unna rais unna gossa deal hadalaniye. Ekam kop kedo vara bodu part is NGOs and civil society organization ane negotiating space ke washage emekala what we call is mood song to vara bodang ekala civil society organizations youth movement then ane a space dani hamekani sarukarunenno NGOs, think tanks, corporations, businesses, teachers, health professionals, doctors, WHO, then hama youth ke hama ekala there is a very strong youth movement to a advocate kura, whether they're advocating for rights, whether they're advocating for justice, a policy change though that affects vara border negotiations inside though. And then we go as observers though. We go as observers, and if we are not happy with something the way a negotiation is going, there is opportunity for civil society organizations to make an intervention though. Then ginafahara interventions are received quite well by the negotiators though.
There is a space for civil society and a space ki vara varuga the space and they use it, and civil society uses it as much as they can, and I think they always fight to have that space koptakuga ba varu gaumutakung ba varu eki masekenge bukure, and there's so much we can learn from one another about what's going on in the rest of the world as well, and what we can do here though as a result of it.
When negotiations come to a deadlock, misalaka a negotiator might say though I just don't have the mandate and my public won't support this though, and we might pull out a research though that we've done and say actually the public supports. And a good example will be we did a pan-European study on what do young people think about climate justice. The research showed though young people across Europe care about climate justice, and they want vulnerable countries like Maldives to have justice, to have loss and damage funding and all of that though, and they want to learn from Maldives. What we also learned is what justice means is different countries, and when you give that the engagement from the public to the negotiators, then impact happens though. I would like to ask Inge, what would you like Maldives to be or to reach Kopska?
I think mifaru midi hafta UNICEF ki asumi bevi ane pre-COP initiatives that with specifically targeted at youth. Then muri hafta terega there was like a mock COP negotiation for 2 days. Then intergenerational dialogue ka power workshops, marine special planning, eki kala activities emihuna introduce kodeng as climate change ki kobakama climate change ki impact ki konka kantattaketo. Then egen as intergenerational dialogue vara power, like I think we got a lot of pointers on things that people would like to see more. Misalaka long-term planning kihinatto zuwanun tankola boda involve kuraveni. Land use plan, marine special plan echiga consult kurana goggota kihinatto asu emme rangala mihuna consult kogem mika resilience incorporate kuraveni design echisa. Then as climate education came up all the time. Curriculums kihinatto climate education tankola boda include Kurani. Teacher training, student maja gotaka note in interactive gota how to use our environment as a way of teaching about climate resilience more. How to make the science more relatable though. I think civil society does a very good job with that. Kinatto and kivagento muhimmi asu rajekala gaume koptaku gabaveru.
Also, organizations like Climate Outreach, UK specific ways, European Pacific ways, NGOs, though, Aslo, Warapada Epajehe network and link Arlang, Rayan Menkahala, and climate leaders, the next generation. A intergenerational dialogue terrain, Waraboda Aslo Ekala. Divehinga journey Ebakiadin though. Climate is not just about ecology, it affects the ekala kai. I'm always like, I hope my Guardian bind never disappears though. I don't want the taste of rihaakuru to disappear though. I want that's my generation ne. And I wonder what Rayan Menge generation kocheto ekala what you want to preserve sagafi gotum vies, cultural gotum vies.
It's funny because I had the same conversation at work today. I'm like, for real. Like, someone asked me, like, I don't want my kids to ask me how rihaakuru tasted like, which was really crazy for me to think about. Like, okay, in my head, rihaakuru ka kanda askurani, like, as in some way or the other, because we can't. I feel like, I mean, now this is turned into a rihaakuru podcast, but I don't want that. Like I'm saying, it's very important to our culture. So I feel like just for the sake of rihaakuru, Maldivians would become more climate responsible about the climate, right? So I think that is how we should push it. Save rihaakuru. That's right.
Save rihaakuru.
I mean, that's a good campaign, right?
That's right.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's hard to imagine a future where it isn't there. Undaguli eti explain kodeng. Because you can't imagine that it's not going to be there. Which brings me back to climate justice. What in your opinion is as the climate justice?
No, Marco, wait, before we get into it, just to clarify, you did mention what is climate justice to us might not be the same to some other country, though. So, Noora, are you going to be telling us in general or Rajya based kofa? Me answer the ero.
Insanu kura kanta kundo climate change mi annani. Miharo seasonal changes a wakame ekam a baseline badaluvumi human intervention though human overusing the nature though a balance though ekamo duniega emmenne evvarakannundo ane a natural resources beenum koffa carbon mi emit kurani climate change ke asaru mi kurani eki gaumutakuga eki mis mihunnan eki communities and eki goiggotta Misalaka Pakistan Balafia Fudevaraka Ekala catastrophic events to Yanani. US Africa Balafia continental drought sama ane mi famine do Yanani and Hembunanama US Midlands. It changes the nation's trajectory though. Mihar Eha Rajik Eha Bodu income climate adaptation resilience spendukurati. The prospect of our future is really sort of, is something we are fighting constantly for. Should big polluters pay? Should richer countries help us? These are the questions that's around climate justice. Then I believe, like it's really important people who contributes most to climate change to do something about it. And that's why I try to put my efforts in changing European, so divehinna benefit a little bit.
Yeah, even if we do make Komasaruka changes, it's not going to be anything because like our carbon emissions is what negligible.
I think Raja has a very big role to play. Aslo.
Yeah.
And climate change is not about just the emission, though climate justice might be about combined emissions. Climate change affects our life, though. Divehin has a very big, powerful story to tell. Divehi Rajya plastic ban kurevenya kivehem yuna nuambi. Divehi Rajya adapt wenya kivehem yuna nuambi. We suffer most, but we have so many stories to tell, those success stories. Dengan Rajya me have fishing, Kurigi Rajya ki fishing academy. Now we are transitioning into sort of other sorts of blue economy, and we are doing our best to save that. As Rajya needs to be to keep going and tell these stories. People listen and watch what happens in Rajya and in Punanam. You are powerful, and so I would say it's not about how much carbon we emit. It's more about divehinge kalaruha josha divehi hivvarudo. That's something the world needs, Aslo.
That's pretty solid. Okay, Noora. So I think from this, the biggest takeaway is rihaakuru save kuranchewa kada. So that is something in my head. Today's conversation, what I've learned from you is we need to save our rihaakuru before it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why we cool the world down.
That's right. And then I have to become a climate leader as well now. That's my goal.
We've decided you're a climate leader already, so you are.
Yeah, I know. I heard that point. I was like, yeah. So, anyways, thank you so much for joining us, Noora. We've had a wonderful time talking to you. It was very nice to be able to hear things in a way that I understood, rather than having to ask you every time, what does that mean? So, yeah, that's up.
Yeah. Thank you, Noora. Ryan, have you seen any artwork around Male that makes you think about climate change or climate impact or plastic pollution?
Nope.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously? You really haven't?
I haven't. Where is it?
But don't you ride around Male?
No, I just go from work to home and then gym. That's all. Like, I don't go to.
Okay, well,
Now I've been coming here, so I mean, is it nearby here?
there's a mural,
Yeah.
okay, outside Rasparnu, which shows kind of being like a pristine underwater scene. Then plastic, ekkolga plastic for fishing nets, etc. Then anakkolga hama. The importance of a healthy ecosystem, plastic neruma eke penu.
I haven't gone. I don't go area again, and I just like to stay in my zone, you know.
Well, can
But
you
I'll go check
go?
it out after this. After this, I'll go. Yeah, I'll let
Alright.
you know. I'll send you a picture. I've been here. I'll take a selfie, maybe, you know.
No, but that's the point, eh? Please take a selfie.
I will. I'll make others take it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, don't throw plastic in the ocean.
I don't. Okay. I don't go in the ocean enough to do it.
I wanted to introduce you to somebody.
All right.
This is Khadeeja,
Hello.
Minister of State for Climate Change, Environment, Climate Change and Technology. She's also our chief negotiator at COP, and my very good friend.
All right. Hello, Khadeeja.
Hi,
We are
Ryan.
pleased to have you here.
And thank you, Sab. Same. I'm excited to be here.
But Khadeeja hasn't always been government.
Oh. Didn't she work in non-government organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's been like everywhere, really.
Yeah, well, I have been in government in these 5 years, but before this, I worked outside of the government. Well, right before this, I was in, yeah. So I have worked in NGOs. So I worked in transparency. When I first moved back to Mali, I've been in UNDP. I've been in the Red Crescent, and so it's very interesting to be outside and then to be inside. I think you realize how difficult it is to make changes. It's an incredible opportunity to influence policy.
Right.
So that's been good. but it's very different experiences, and I think it's good to have all of it.
What does the chief negotiator do?
As a lead negotiator, the Maldives is a very small country, so we don't go on our own into the COPs. So we work through the Alliance of Small Island States. It's 39 countries, and Maldives is one. So we have common group positions on different things that we are discussing at the climate COPs, and so you decide on which areas that your team would engage, and you also decide on your national positions as well. So even though you have the group positions, you still have national priorities. So all the countries in that group is very different. So you set your priorities, you organize your teams, and you see who engages where, and that's what you do. Rajya ehing gamataka vara boda tafat. A Rajya population is pushing, it's 400,000 and more, I would say. If you think of some of the islands like Palau, their population is 20,000. Marshall Islands has 50,000 people, and Tuvalu and the likes. So islands ekko clump kurarus mehonna nihonna challenges, and we are at a very different place in terms of our development. So we have a thriving tourism industry. We're pretty connected to the globe. I mean, yeah, and some of these islands are really really isolated, and even our COVID experiences have been very different, and their recovery has been very different. So when we're in a room together talking about the islands as a whole, it's actually very different. So us by far Raj mihun dekego or huriha ekiga count korar, it doesn't reflect our realities because ours is very different.
Which is why
Yeah,
it's important.
which is why
it's so
yeah.
important for the Maldives to have a voice, Hama,
Yeah.
and for it to be consistent and very loud
Yes.
when it needs to be. Yeah. Do you know what loss and damage means now? Because we talked about it with Zammat, remember?
I did. So after that chat, I went home and I tried finding out for myself on the internet, but it led me to nowhere.
So it would be, so if you think about it, Raja depends entirely on the ocean for our economic activities, so namely fisheries and tourism. And because the world is heating up faster than we would like it to heat up, the first victim of this is going to be the coral reefs. So when we overshoot 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are currently at 1.1 or 1.2. So this is not, it's coming faster than we think. So when that happens, the likelihood of the corals dying is very, very high. It's 70 to 90%. And so when that happens, it's going to have a lot of consequences on our bait fisheries, on our tourism industry, and on our livelihoods. So what we will lose is not only the coral reefs and the environmental impacts that will come with that, but we'll also have it will have a negative impact on the tourism industry. So the resorts will be affected. It will have an impact on the fisheries, and it will have an overall impact on our well-being in a sense. We already don't have all the freshwater lenses of the islands are really depleted. We already do osmosis for our water. So we need to do a lot of things to guard ourselves from what's to come.
Think ARD like tangible losses at the Kiani, like
Yes,
things that you can really
the
value.
economic losses.
Like loss of culture, language, heritage. Kinato echi eang address kurani. Ehmegenta loss and damage undaguli as to negotiate kuramis.
It will become difficult to live in the Maldives because of these impacts. Ehemvima rajege emmeng ehen tanaka dan jehi jehindega. Devi Jayam, what is going to happen to our language, our culture, and what we were as a people? And that's difficult to Imagine.
Example.
Yeah, we don't want to move places. We want to live here and we want to live well here and we want to be here, which is why we are advocating that the world takes action because Rajyage greenhouse gas emissions ke contribution naki 0.003% of the entire world because there's simply not enough time. A WMO, which is the World Meteorological Organization, has already said that 1.5 could overshoot in 2027. So that is even
Earlier than
earlier
we
than
initially thought.
expected, which is 2030. 2030 මොහෙම වනේ හැවගේ. Then එහෙම වීම අස්තු මීමීගේ urgency. එහෙම වීම we are not at a point where we can, everybody has a responsibility to cut down emissions. It's actually going to be more expensive to deal with the aftermath. So it's better to invest in turning your economies to green economies now than deal with climate migrants, but deal with loss and damage and deal with a lot of litigation in the future.
Nihar adaptation its mitigation invest kurung is in the long term more cost effective than dealing with like loss and damage further down the line.
And then you would think loss and damage if that is the thing that should be done. Well, it's because we have run out of time and so we have to even address this. We have tidal swells, we have coastal erosion, we have more increased frequent storms at higher intensity. Mihuriha heat, yeah. So all of these things. Mikankang halakurang as adaptation wara muhimu and in adaptation ne bunar astu adaptation na ki hamara jege hamatare giya mikura maseketa ki aslo adaptation we have to take into consideration mihuriha kankang korara. So ehim veka muhimu then but because there's not enough time anymore and we're just moving along the way, we have to address this because there's also a lack. How do I say? There's not enough resources to address these collectively. But I actually don't believe it. I think the world has a lot of money and resources when they want to.
Like COVID though.
COVID is a good example. Yeah. So we have to advocate for that kind of to treat climate as the emergency as it is, because it is a global problem and the effects are transboundary. So it affects everybody.
So I wanted to ask, what are green economies and blue economies?
Basically, we use fossil fuels to run our economy. So we use oil and burning, and this is not good for the environment because of the emissions. And so this is switching from that mode of production to an economy that's run on renewable energies. So this is about making more green spaces. This is about encouraging a healthy ocean, which is what you do with by removing plastics, doing good waste management.
Marine protected areas. Aslu our the Masarikam is it's one of the most sustainable Poland line Vimakai. You're not as compared to like trawling and industrial fishing, we're not destroying the seabeds in that weather. I mean,
also young people have a big role to play because when you do things, it also has a domino effect with your parents, with your peers, with everybody really.
Ryan, guess how long it takes for us to get a project?
4 months. Oh, really? Am I that off?
Very off.
Very off. Another guess?
2 years?
No.
Okay, less or more?
More.
Oh, okay, never mind. 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh, that's too long.
Yeah.
It is too long.
Yeah, because by then our plan would have changed too,
Yes,
isn't it? Okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. And so these were the things that we were concerned about in Transparency's work, even
And
at the
still
time.
concerned about
And
that.
so
Yeah.
now, but then my role and what I have been doing with the with the COP has been extremely different. Then my first COP is an NGO, and then now I am I am one of the leads of of the COP for especially within the AOCs. And so we've had a leadership role in the last few COPs, and so the experience has been very different. I'll say I have learned a lot, but I still have 80% more to learn. It's a fraction, so it's a very big learning curve. To have an expectation that Kopakun directly manifest than immediately any climate finance or any such thing immediately, but all of these meetings do help in our resource mobilization. And although it takes a long time, you still need to be in these spaces to advocate for your country's needs and also network and get more resources. It does need a lot of resources to really do our development well. And so
Yeah, and I think before I went to COP, I think me climate change department ke hum Khadeeja Negotiator on the emmek bodang highlight kore kamaki the COP process ki astu rajya libe emme muhima fursatukang, because every country has an equal voice in these negotiations. Even if we don't have an equal access to resources, this is the place where you ask for that. And that's important to kind of keep going. Hajja still has loss and damage, the transitional committee on loss and damage to go.
So this is a process where we're designing the new fund that's going to address loss and damage. And it's important that we design it in a way that it doesn't take 5 years to get access, that more people have actually the accessibility of the fund, that it serves the most vulnerable people of the world, and that it's actually something that's practical, but also really importantly that it is a fund that has money and the resources, because you can make a fund, but the hard part is to capitalize it and to ensure that it is ways for it to sustainably grow without relying on countries' contributions to it. I just also want to say that COP is not the only space. Of course, there's lots of other things that happen nationally and internationally that has a role for everybody to contribute to this conversation and to make changes. So it's only one part of a very big ecosystem of actors in climate.
So, Hajja, thank you for joining us and helping us convey a lot of information to our listeners and myself as well. I've learned a lot from you today. So, like I said earlier, it's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Yeah.